The family of Katlego Bereng, whose burnt body was found in Thabo Bester's prison cell, is planning to sue the state. Police told the family that Bereng had collapsed in town and died in a hospital before he was taken to a government mortuary. Now the family wants to know how their son's body ended up in the convicted murderer's cell at the Mangaung Correctional Centre, all as part of his elaborate escape plan. For more on this, we're joined this morning by legal analyst Mpumelelo Zikalala, joins us via our video link this morning. Mr. Zikalala, thanks for coming on. This raises so many questions, right? Not least of which, has the SAPS done, or did the SAPS do what they were meant to do? Because they told the story, they told the family one story at the time of them looking for their missing loved one. But what now is apparent is that that seems to have been a lie.
Yes, I think that's a very important question. Now, what that does for the family and the legal request which they would have, then they would say, we want an inquest in this particular matter. We know that the SAPS are going to do their investigations. Maybe people are going to be arrested if they haven't been arrested already. But you want a proper inquest which is going to be heard by a presiding officer, because that's the only chance in which we are going to have an opportunity to be led through the docket, for example. So the docket is then going to tell us who is implicated in this matter, who was the main role player that orchestrated all this thing on the mastermind, what is it that they were able to gain. So I'm able to run through the trial before the actual trial actually starts. I want to do that to cover two things. Firstly, I want the wrongdoer to be brought to book. The SAPS and the legal justice system will take care of that. However, I want, in instances in which someone has been negligent in executing their duties, to then come after them for pain and suffering and special damages and other cause or legal recourse that I may have, in terms of saying, you have failed to provide your duty in a manner in which you ought to have done so as prescribed by the law. And by your failure, I've suffered immense pain, and I want you to compensate me for the pain. But most importantly, it must be a lesson learned not only to you, but to other government officials, that you mustn't do this type of things, because there are ramifications, especially for the family. So if I were in their shoes, I would then say to the SAPS, yes, I want you to do the investigation as it is, but because this is a peculiar or one in a million cases, I want an inquest to be made, and that inquest must be presented in front of a presiding officer, and also want an opportunity to be part of that inquest so that I'm able to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, do you think that all of the questions you've raised now, that this is going to need to be clarified before the actual trial against Thabo Bester and Nandipa Magudumana gets underway?
Yeah, definitely. Let's separate it into two tranches. Firstly, during the bail applications, if Bester and Dr. Magudumana are going to apply for bail, certainly I would want to be part of that and say to the court, well, listen to what I have to say pertaining to this particular matter. I want to emphasize the point that these are initial investigations that still need to be done. If you allow them to go outside when they prove to us that they are allegedly crime or evidence concealers in the way in which they've acted or conducted themselves, what's going to happen to the investigation in which I'm conducting? So I think they're better placed when they're in jail while I conduct this investigation and get to the bottom of this. It can be proved that they form part and parcel of these particular elements. That is why they're in the docket as we speak, or while they're in jail as we speak. So there's a direct link between them and the body which was found. In this body is actually the body of my son. So what I want to do is for them to be kept in jail once I do all these investigations myself, and then during the trial stage will then come in. Now the inquest is also going to assist the police in terms of testing the waters as to the quality and the quantity of the evidence that they have, because you must also remember that they have a burden that says you must prove beyond reasonable doubt that the individuals who are in the docket are indeed guilty. So the only way you can be able to prove that and test whether it's going to suffice in court, is going to be enough evidence in court, is to go the way of an inquest and then allow all those pieces of evidence to be interrogated so that you're able to source new information if so required, or beef up the one that you have so that you're able to come back with a conviction. So if you go with a case which is not really that solid, when you're trying to present a certain version with loopholes in it, you're then opening up instances of doubt and instances in which the individuals that are really accused can end up being let go or being found not guilty. But most importantly, we must also remember that it's not only Bester and Dr. Magudumana that could have been able to orchestrate this particular matter. You needed a contingent of individuals, especially within the G4S or Department of Correctional Services and other government or state institutions that would have been part and parcel of. Now, if those missing individuals are not there, you are breaking the link or the causal chain that will be able to prove that the people which are in the docked and the results that have taken place are interconnected. So there is further investigation which is required in this matter. And I don't think that if there's going to be someone going to be let out of bail at this stage, is going to assist the state. So from the side of the parents, especially of the deceased, it's in their best interest that they go to court and say, we want an inquest first, but during your bail applications, if you are going to apply for bail, we are going to be on the side of the state saying that you mustn't be provided with bail.
Yeah. So I mean, what you're alluding to here is the fact that this must have been a massive case of collusion and a cover-up involving various government institutions. You've mentioned the police, G4S, which runs Mangaung Correctional Centre, correctional services. It's so incredibly far-reaching, isn't it?
Definitely. And it must be worrying. And if I was in the shoes of the Minister of Correctional Services sitting in the lodge of the police, I would be very worried. In fact, I would say, let me use this as a test case. There are loopholes in the system in which we are running. There are loopholes in the legislation in which we are operating in. Let's try and find them. Yes, we know that this particular act has taken place. We can be able to investigate that. But if I'm going to have members in my team who are dishonest, they don't have their allegiance, which is towards South Africans and as a country, and are susceptible to corruption in this particular manner, then the bigger question is how many other individuals have been let go in this particular manner? If you want to throw it as far or maybe cast the net far wide, you must then ask for questions. Why then do we have so many cases which are not being investigated or can't be cracked when it comes to investigations within the police? Is it maybe that there are individuals who are incarcerated that are hired out to go and perform hits and then they go back to prison? In that case, then they have proper alibis and can't be linked to the investigations. That's why we have a number of cold cases that can't be solved. So it's a bigger question than that. And from the side of government, you then say, let me try and find a permanent solution and maybe try and find reasons or cause of the problems that we have by making sure that this particular investigation is conducted in a proper manner. Yeah,
we've known it for some time, haven't we, that even convicted criminals run their enterprises from inside their prison cells. But I suppose what this Thabo Bester case has done is that it's put the spotlight on this again. What does this do for trust in the sector, Mr. Zikalala?
It damages the trust in a very big way. It then says, I as a member of the public, if I go to the police and someone is convicted, what assurance do I have that justice is going to be served? Already we have a problem now when it comes to parole and the manner in which parole is being administered. It seems as if it's a much more lesser sentence in which a person would get, and they create promises when one is sitting at court and they're saying that you're going to get a life sentence, and yet in a few years' time you are then let go. So what I was told was sitting by the presiding officer at court is not what happens in reality, and it's something in which our lawmakers, the legislatures, ought to look at, especially when it comes to the amendment of the Correctional Services Act, and say, is it providing the type of assistance that it needs? Before a person gets to jail, there's an investigation that takes place, there's a trial that takes place, there are a number of individuals that are involved there, and there's massive efforts, financially and non-financially, that had led to the person being convicted, only to be let go by the Correctional Services Act and the Parole Board, simply because it is alleged that the person has been behaving good within prison. But what about me as a person? Where's the justice when it comes to me as a victim? So it's all those things in which our correctional services has got to look at, the SAPS has got to look at and say, how can we tighten the boards and make sure that we are closing those loopholes in which people are able to use and utilize our systems to continue with their devious deeds? Not only that, let me try and make an example of this matter that if you do something which is against the law, especially when you are working for the Ministry, South African Police, and also for the Department of Correctional Services, we are going to issue out to you the maximum punishment that there is, whether criminally and even civilly, so that it is a lesson to all the other officials that are there, that if you engage in this type of act, the wrath of the law is going to definitely fall upon you.
Yeah, absolutely. And what the family now needs is not only closure, but justice as well for the death of their son, Katlego Bereng. Mr. Zikalala, let me thank you for your time this morning. Some legal analysis for you there with Mpumelelo Zikalala on the latest developments around the Thabo Bester saga.